Hey everyone, this is a quick demo of Schednex. Schednex is an AI-based Kubernetes scheduler, which sounds pretty wild. This project was 50% research, 50% feasibility study. I hope that you find it interesting and please feel free to check it out and contribute. So, what is Schednex? Let's get started. So, Schednex is a project that is on GitHub that I've open sourced approximately 3 or 4 weeks ago. I want to show you kind of what the architecture looks like for Schednex. So, if we sort of recap through this diagram, those of you who have used KHGPT before will be familiar with the format of using either the operator or the CLI. Schednex leverages that ecosystem to take the LLM backends that you've already pre-configured and uses those to make effectively placement decisions. What it ultimately does is to control the bindings in Kubernetes. This is using the scheduler extension API through K8s, and it is allowing us to do things that we haven't been able to do before, such as to evaluate the cluster context and configuration, right? So if I have a cluster that's got a bunch of KHGPT results, as we could see right here, Schednex can take those into consideration when it does or makes a placement decision. So let's take a really quick go at this. So I'm going to deploy it locally. This is the same as if you ran the Helm chart through the repository. Once Schednex is deployed, you can see it running in the cluster as a scheduler pod in kube system. So there we go. What we're going to do is we're going to deploy out a simple Nginx deployment. And if we take a quick look at that, the only thing you need to do to use Schednex is to label it with the scheduler name there. Okay, so what's going to happen is Schednex is going to use KHGPT to make those decisions. So in fact, the first thing it will do is to check and see if there's a KHGPT deployment inside the cluster. You can see already it's set to pending. I have a KHGPT CRD here, which is set up. That means that I have a KHGPT deployment, and if we read the log from Schednex right down here, we can see that it's backing off because it's doing some patching at the moment, but what it's going to do is come back and make a placement decision in a moment. You can see that my pods are creating now. You can see the first one has just started. It's started running. Sometimes this takes a little bit longer than your normal scheduling. I think that's a big caveat to mention in these preliminary tests. That is because we're using remote APIs, and it would be an order of magnitude faster if you're using a local API. So you can see now we've got our Nginx pods starting to be scheduled, and this is going via the remote API, coming back in and placing these in the cluster, making our scheduling decisions. We can also see that activity. We go through KHGPT. You can see that KHGPT is in fact calling the remote APIs to the LLM backend and making placement decisions and passing that information back to Schednex. To do that, it uses a gRPC protocol, which is part of the KHGPT family that we use as an interop layer. The next sort of phase of this project is to introduce a project called Interplex that is going to give you a caching layer as well. And the long-term value here is that we're building effectively a synthetic AI control plane that can mimic a human being, right? So this sort of placement decisions are interesting as well because we can be reactive to changes in the cluster. We can even use Schednex to reevaluate placement if a node goes down, if a node gets heavily utilized. For those of you not aware, Kubernetes uses a fairly simplistic scoring system. So this is a bit more of a step up in the direction of almost as if you were taking the best parts of affinities and the best parts of eyeballing it and actually using an LLM to help make those decisions. So as we can see, you've now got Nginx deployed, and it's decided to deploy them equally across all three think centers that I've got. And as you would have seen earlier on, I didn't set any kind of topology keys in my configuration here. So that's been a decision that's been made remotely. If you're interested in this and you want to give me some early feedback, please do jump in, take a look at the project. This has just been a real whirlwind example of what Schednex is. I think that AI-based scheduling is in its pre-infancy. This is the first example I've seen of it, and I can't claim to have gotten everything right. I would love to work with other people and collaborate to figure out what this looks like, a bit more performant, a bit more savvy in the decision making, and something we can also test and ratify. So if that's interesting, you want to give it a go, please do check out Schednex. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Cheers.